Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're looking at the Incandescent Grottoes, which is an adventure scenario for old school essentials written by Gavin Norman. So Gavin's one of my favorite adventure writers. I've run a number of his adventures in the past, including things like The Hole in the Oak and Winter's Daughter, and I've always had a really great time. They hit this really nice balance of being very easy to read, very easy to run, and having a nice mix of both the familiar and the kind of whimsical and unearthly that really hits my sweet spot. So I was very excited to read this one. Let's look at the back of our book here. It says, a bubbling stream cascades into a hole in the earth, leading to a series of underground watercourses and scintillating grottos. Adventurers who delve within may discover odd mosses and fungi, a ruined temple complex, and the lair of a crystal-eating dream dragon. Recommended for characters of 1st to 2nd level. So this is a great intro adventure. It also connects up with the Hole in the Oak. So there's literally a way to get from this dungeon to that one if you want to link things together. So I love that it has a dragon here. This adventure has both a dungeon and a dragon. So this has everything you need, right? What else do you need to run a fantasy adventure? Before we get started though, a quick shout out to today's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Chaotic Neutral, an oversized comic book and adventure module inspired by the old school RPGs that scared a nation. Written by Mark Sable of Miskatonic, and illustrated by Chris Anderson of Heavy Metal, Chaotic Neutral is 48 pages of magic, adventure, and storytelling, featuring evil cults, cyclopean ruins, and murder hobo peasants. Just check out this incredible artwork. Issue 1 is already fully illustrated, and the adventure module is already written. Click the link in the description below to check it out on Kickstarter to get it for yourself. All right, let's see what we get inside here. Start off with our map. This is a 2-level dungeon. So the first level is right here on the front, and then the second level is at the back. Makes them very easy to refer to. The downside here is that you don't have the encounters on the front or back because it's taken up by these maps, but that's fine. What are you going to do? There's a lot of great loops built into this. It has a lot of jaquaying. So for example, there's a loop all the way from here through here. There's like smaller loops within these cave patterns. There's like loops all the way through here if you include these secret doors. And there's vertical loops as well, because there's a whole bunch of ways to get down to that second level. You can head down through these stairways here. They kind of connect up that way. There's a way to get through it through the underground pool here. There's an underground river that can wash you down to that level. So there's lots of ways to get up and down. I like that. There's a lot of verticality. So you can explore in more than one direction. Most of the rooms that you find here are going to have more than one way that you can reach them, which really allows players to feel like they're genuinely exploring, not just following a railroad. It has the standard design that we've seen in most of Old School Essentials maps before, where everything is numbered with the different encounters labeled there, so you know the general types of NPCs that you're probably going to find. As I mentioned before, I would like the rooms to actually have names on them. I think they would help a little bit, but that's a little bit of a nitpick, I suppose. Talks about going into the mythic underworld. That this is anytime you're going underground into dungeons in D&D, there should be some effort made to make it work out so it's somewhat plausible, but you don't need to go overboard, at least in my opinion. Things are weird when you go deep into the underground, into the mysterious realms, and that's okay. We have a general adventure overview here, including some of the different factions. We have troglodytes. We have a rogue prismist who is hiding down in level 2 that you can talk to. She's going to have missions for you. A dream dragon and a cult of oozes, or people who worshipped an ooze and were turned into oozes for the most part. And a necromancer. We have the relationships between all of them. That's really great. And how to do monster reactions. If you want to harvest crystals, because there's a lot of glowing crystals throughout this area. I guess that would make having torches and light sources less of a priority, but it'll have a lot of great light shows because you can have things glowing with different colors depending on the type of room that they're in. Rules for running the underground river, though that shows up in more than one Gavin adventure. You also see it in the Hole in the Oak. Having running water underground is a lot of fun because there's a lot of ways that players can mess with that, and the DM can mess with the players too. Players have to be careful not to be swept away downstream. It just adds one more obstacle to think about. A great table of rumors here. For example, there might be mischievous fairies that haunt the grottos. That's false. Or true things like a ruined accursed temple filled with great treasure lies in the caves. I love how all of these new adventures have all of the treasure laid out on one page from levels 1 and 2, including the total treasure that you can find on each level. That's a nice piece of information you often don't see. Here's our random tables, random happenings. It's the standard setup for OSE, where you have 12 different things, half of which are encounters, and half of which are just other fun thematic stuff. Like the PC's light sources flicker violet and tangerine for 1 turn. It's great. And a separate one for level 2. Some of these, those flavor things can give you clues as to other things that could be down there with you. Starting to get into the level 1 descriptions, we start off with this river that is flowing above ground. It falls off this waterfall into an underground cave, and that's where you're going to have your dungeon entrance. You walk down this stairway, there's a little pool of water here, but you might notice that the water is not overflowing into the rest of the cave system, which tells you that there is an underground water passage that you can take, especially if you eat some of the herbs growing nearby that can allow you to breathe underwater. We have our standard OSE layout, which is really easy to read. Lots of bolding. We have parentheses for when things get more detailed. Notes are done with these little bullet points. It's all really nice. My main complaint is that the way this is designed, each room is always sort of done from right to left, right? So room 3 takes up this section right here. Room 4 takes up this section right here, which kind of runs against the way that your eye moves in vertical columns. So often the impulse is to start reading here and then to start reading down, and things get confusing. So you get back up to here again. You realize you're back in room 3. Since the eyes tend to go down columns, my preference would have been for the room 3 to just be like 1 column here, then room 4 just continuing on over there. I think it would flow a little bit better, so you don't jump around as much. We have lots of interactivity. There's lots of cases where you have like a long hallway with lots of rooms leading off it. That's like a little thing, but I love situations like that because knocking down the door to see what's on the other side is like the essence of what I like about dungeon crawling. And there's plenty of those where even knocking on the door will give you different sounds. There's a lot of physical sensory clues that he gives you when determining where you're going to go next. So things aren't arbitrary, right? What does it sound like is behind the door? Does it sound like there's liquid behind there? If you're choosing 2 different directions, there might be a glow of a certain kind of light coming from one way or a stench coming from the other direction. Excellent, right? So players aren't making arbitrary decisions. They're basing their decisions off of the information that you're giving them. Give players lots of information. All sorts of fun traps in here. These rooms could be full of weird slime things. There could be magical traps. We have jellied skeletons who have this layer of jelly on the outside of them that are guarding a room. And if they touch you, they'll start poisoning you, or the acid will start burning you. Strobing eyes. So we have a room full of these eye motifs all over them. And if you pull the lever, the eyes on the ceiling emit a burst of strobing white light. All non-chaotic characters must save versus spells will be driven berserk. Great. I love it when your alignment has mechanical effects, which is something you don't often see in more recent adventures, but it's definitely more of a thing in older stuff because in older games, your alignment wasn't your personality per se. It was more like an actual alignment, like who you were allied with. Right? What side of the universe you were on. So it was more like a faction thing. An ooze demon imprisoned in a circle. And if you break the circle, then boy, you're in trouble. A whole area for these weird cultists who worship oozes. There's a lot of ooze themed stuff here. There's some traps here. There's different like containment jars with stuff bubbling in them. There's levers to pull that can release different kinds of force fields and raise and lower gates. That's really good because that's interactivity. Players are going to make choices, and then those choices are going to come back to haunt them. That's what you want. Teleport discs over here. You step onto them. They can zoom you to different parts of the dungeon, possibly splitting up the party. That might be a pain if that's not something you like to run. But the book is quite easy to run just off the fly, though I would recommend reading the whole thing first. So even if you are split up, it shouldn't be too hard for you to run 2 different groups at once. Although what I suspect would happen is if part of the party vanishes on one of these discs, probably more party members are going to want to join them, but you never know. Some different statues to mess with. I like this one. There's a skull statue. It's just like a pile of skulls. And let's see. There's some writing in troglodytes. It just says, do not touch. So that's a clear enough warning, but you know someone's going to want to do it anyway. So if you actually touch the statue, you are saved versus death or instantly disintegrated, except for your skull, which falls onto the pile. Great stuff. Because a trap like that, there's plenty of warning. You can see the pile of skulls, and then when it happens to you, it perfectly fits with the theme of the trap. You see what happened. You see what happened to all the previous victims of it, and then you say, well, I had that coming. So here's an example of where the layout is not done in a column. It's just done in these like sort of side to side blocks where you have like these very short, very simple rooms, but they're spread side to side across a wide space, which is a little bit of a pain. Some doppelgangers to mess around with your players. We have some murals to investigate, a number of different types of weird factions like frogs, some giant frogs. You can slice them open and perhaps find things inside. We have an evil temple, and there's always clues. There's warnings to most deadly stuff in this dungeon, which is a sign of good writing. So for example, there's some really deadly stuff in here, but right outside the entrance, you're going to find a dead adventurer with like their mouth open in fear and like an arrow in their back, like they're running away from this temple. So you know there's something dangerous in there. You know to be prepared. There's a gibbering mouther, I believe. We have some troglodytes, which smell terrible, but who are looking for a new leader because their recent leader was just killed. There's plenty of opportunity there for manipulating that faction, maybe taking it over or turning it against other factions. Battle for supremacy as the different troglodytes fight each other. We have slug babies, which are like 1 foot long slugs with human faces like demented babies, retractable eye tentacles, grumbling and whining, hungry for fresh meat. That'll freak your players out. An acid bath, this is a great trap. So we have like this long room right here where the floor of it is like a grating and you can see acidic slime underneath it. But as you step onto the room, the grating falls down into the floor and you get submerged in the ooze. And what I would do is I would make the grating kind of oozy already, like you can see that it's slimy. So you would know that it somehow got covered in ooze to make you a little bit more suspicious. And right above it, there is a trapdoor. This is the second level. So the first level is up here and you can fall down a trapdoor, land on there, and then have to deal with the ooze. There's also these pillars here, so possibly you could climb the pillars to try and get away from it. So players have options. There's a poison gas trap. Oh, this is a good trap as well. So there's like this little alcove right here with these 4 little mini alcoves, and there's these weird little heads that can spurt out gas if you do the wrong thing. I believe like there's a lever that you have to pull or a door you have to open. So players are triggering it by investigating in an uncautious manner. But they have one round in order to make a decision. So you open up this little door that triggers the trap, and you can hear the trap spinning up and getting it ready to start spouting poison gas. And players have one action to maybe try and run away, perhaps put something over their face, maybe try and close up the mouth of these little spouts, which are like these little gargoyle heads that give off the gas. So you have things that you can do. Players feel like they're in control. A number of different tombs to investigate. Some janitor zombies. You got to have a reason for why the tomb stays relatively clean. Zombies walking around cleaning stuff. I love these little slightly whimsical elements. Things don't have to be really grimdark all the time. That just makes things fun. A fungal beach. Tomb of the Ooze Priestess. We're in for a bit of a hard fight there. A turtle bridge, a little bridge here, but a turtle can jump out of the water and drag you in. Though if you look carefully, you can see him ahead of time and try and scare him off. There's crystal wards here that prevent you from even seeing this direction. So people who are able to nullify spells like that can get to explore a little bit further. You can find this illusionist who's hiding out here. Her husband has been imprisoned in a mirror along with a whole bunch of other bad guys. And so you can either try and free him through magical means, or if you try and break the mirror, he does get released, but he will also release the things that are trapped in there with him, and you'll have to deal with that. A little bit further along, we find some mineral baths that you can soak in and heal some hit points. And of course, this dream dragon. So he has a breath weapon where you have to save versus breath, and it'll put you to sleep. It's a sleeping breath. So he'll put you to sleep, and then I assume he'll eat you afterwards. He only has 6 hit dice, so 20 hit points. It's pretty tough, but a group of level 1 or level 2 player characters could take him out if they're smart. If they just run up to him and just charge into battle, probably not. But if you catch him while he's asleep, if you plan an ambush, if you try and think about what he might be vulnerable to, you do have a chance of taking out a dragon at level 1 or 2, which makes players feel great. And that's it. We have some notes at the back for expanding the dungeon in case you want to make it more elaborate. And of course, if you want to connect it to other adventures like the Hole in the Oak. I love little notes like this because it really tells you as the dungeon master, don't necessarily be satisfied with this dungeon. You can elaborate on it. You can expand it, add another level beneath it if that's what you want to do. Great stuff. All right, so that's the Incandescent Grottoes. It looks like a classic Gavin Norman adventure. I would be very excited to run this, especially for new players. That's exactly what it's for. I'll put links down in the description below if you want to check that out for yourself. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.